Masechet Baba Mesia Daf Pe Gimel, in which we complete the 6th perek and begin the 7th perek. We ended off talking about a beraita of Isi ben Yehuda, who quoted the pasuk regarding Shomer Chinam that says, Shomer Chinam generally, if it's Geneva and Aveda, he can make a swear that he was not negligent, he did his job properly, but it was stolen or lost, and then he does not have to pay. However, Isi ben Yehuda says, when is that true? Only if there are no witnesses around, and ro'eh, there's nobody there to see. But if there are witnesses around, then a vow is not sufficient. He has to actually bring those witnesses to testify, yes, we saw this shomer, he did a proper job, he was not negligent, and then he can get away with not paying. Only if there's no witnesses around, then he can make a vow. Another application of this, besides Shomer Chinam, is a porter. Even though from the Torah law, a porter is responsible, the rabbis made a takana. We saw up here, takanat hachamim, because if you make porters liable if they break something, then no one will ever want to move a barrel from one place to another. And therefore, the rabbis made a takana. They said, Shavua, all he has to do is make a vow. Shelo bekavana shevartia. I did not break it on purpose. It was an accident. And that way, it protects the porters. Now we're going to see a series of stories about this law. Hahu gavra dehava kama avad habita dechamra beristeka demechoza v'tabra beziza demechoza. There was someone who was transporting a barrel of wine for someone else in the market place of Mechoza, and it broke on one of the protrusions from out of the walls, things sticking out of the walls, and he passed by it, and it smashed this barrel of wine. Atalakamed Rava. Rava was the rabbi in Mechoza. Amar le risteka de Mechoza shchichi ba'inashe. Zila tere'ayav ipata. Rava says, where were you? In the marketplace of Mechoza? There's always lots of people there. Surely there was a witness that saw what happened, and therefore for you, it's not enough that you just make a vow that you didn't do it on purpose. Bring a witness who was there, who saw that you were carrying it, and you were carrying it carefully, and this was just a mistake, this was just an accident, and then you won't have to pay. Amar le Rav Yosef bere, keman ki isi, amar le in ki isi, usbira lan kevate. Rav Yosef, his son, said, who are you following? Are you following Isi ben Yehuda? And Rav answered, yes, I am, because I follow the halacha according to his opinion. Another story. ההוא גברה דאמר לחברי זיל זבין לי 400 דני חמרה הזיל זבן לי לסוף אתה לקמה אמר לי זביני לך 400 דני חמרה ותקיפו להו. Someone asked a messenger to his friend, go and buy me 400 pitchers of wine, and the friend did in fact go and they bought for him 400 pitchers of wine, and he put it in his storehouse somewhere. However, in the end, after some time, that friend came to the sender and said, listen, sorry to tell you, but remember those 400 pitchers of wine that I bought for you? I did, I bought them, but they turned into vinegar. So now what do we do? Atala kamed Rava amar le aba me'adene chamrati kifi kala itla milta zil aiter ayam de meikara ki mezabenat lehu chamra me'aleya hava ve'ipatar. So they came to Rava, and he said, well, 400 pitchers of wine turned into vinegar? Surely people would have heard about it. If that's true, if this really happened, this is a lot of wine. This is like a major event, and the locals around there would have heard if this was true. So therefore, Rava told the messenger, it's not sufficient for you just to make a vow that you were not negligent. Go bring witnesses that saw that you bought when you bought it, it was good wine, and only afterwards it became vinegar, and that not that you went and bought vinegar in the first place, and then you won't have to pay. Amar le Rav Yosef bere keman ki isi, amar le in ki isi usbira lan kevaten. Again, Rav Yosef, Rava's son, said, are you following the opinion of Isi? And he said, yes, I am, and I think that halacha is according to his opinion. Atken Rav Chia bar Yosef besichra. Hane dedaru be'agra v'itbar neshalem palga. Mai ta'ama nafish lehad v'zutar letre karob le'ones v'karob le'peshia. Bedigla meshalem kula. So Rav Chia bar Yosef, he made a decree in the city of Sichra that if one person carries a load on a pole and then the item breaks, he has to pay half. Now, this kind of pole that agra called an agra, why should the person carrying it? He's a porter. Why should he have to pay half? Right? After all, we saw before that Deoraita, you should pay the whole thing, but Rabbanan makes a vow, pay nothing. So what's the deal in this case? Well, because something that's carried on this type of pole called an agra, that means it's too heavy for one person to carry, even though it's pretty light for two people to carry. So it's kind of in between. And therefore, since it's in between, it's halfway honest, beyond his control, and halfway negligent. In other words, it's somewhat negligent because it's really too heavy for one person to carry. So this porter should not have tried to carry it alone. On the other hand, you don't really need two people. It's like kind of light when two people carry it. Kind of feels silly. It's like it's not that heavy. And so he thought maybe he could do it. And so in that way, it's more like honest, because if you would carry something that is easy for one person to carry, and then something goes wrong, so that's honest. So this is halfway in between honest and pishia, and therefore that person pays half. However, if he carries something that would usually be that you usually carry with a digla, a different kind of wooden tool that you use for a double load, something that's heavier that you need two people to carry, so some kind of a pole or tool that two people would carry it, and one person tries to carry it and it breaks, he drops it, so then he has to pay the whole thing because that is pishia. He's totally negligent. Why are you carrying something alone? Right? If I hire a piano mover and he comes and tries to move the piano alone and drops it, obviously he's going to be liable, right? He did something that cannot be done. Last story, Rabba bar Hanan tebaru lehanhu shikulae habita de hamra. Rabba bar Hanan, he had some porters that were working for him to carry wine, and they broke his barrel of wine. Shekal limayhu atu amru lerav. So Rabba, he said, "What did you do, the porter? You dropped my wine. You have to pay me for it." And they didn't have any money. These are poor people. So he took their cloaks from them. Now they came to Rav to complain. This is, we were working for him. We're movers. We dropped the wine. He took our cloaks. Amale havlehu gilimayhu. So Rav, the great sage, told Rabba, give them back their cloaks. Amarle dinahachi. Rabba said, is that the law? Aren't I entitled from the letter of the law? Because they dropped it, I should be able to collect money, and they don't have money, I'm collecting their cloaks. Amarle in leman telech bederech tobim. And Rav said, yes, this is the law. After all, the pasuk in Mishleh says that you should always walk in the way of good men. It seems what he's actually saying is, you're right, you don't usually quote a halacha from Mishleh. So he's saying, you're right, from the letter of the law, they should have to pay. They were negligent somehow, or he's talking about the basic deoraita law. However, he said, now, so this is the law. So Rabbi was relying on something, but I've said you should go beyond the letter of the law. And so therefore, the beyond the letter of the law is the right way to practice, and the right way is to follow not just, technically they owe me, but rather to be a good person, always walk in the way that a good person would walk. And they didn't do it on purpose. They dropped it. But don't take their stuff and make them pay for it. So Rabba returned their cloaks. Okay, he thought he was done with it. But the porters again pressed Rav and said, listen, we are poor. We worked all day for Rabba. We carried lots of things, and we are hungry. We have nothing to eat. He didn't pay us but he took our cloaks. He certainly didn't pay us our wages for the day. Amar le zil hab agrayu. Rav told Rabbah, go and pay them their wages for the day. Amar le dinachi. Rabbah says, is that the law? After they drop my stuff and cause me a loss, I have to pay them? Amar le'in v'alchot tzadikim tishmor. And Rav says yes, and he quotes the rest of the pasuk that you should always keep the path of the righteous, be righteous, do the best thing you can. These are poor people. They didn't break it on purpose. They worked all day. Sometimes it happens. Things break. You have to take that into account, right? Get transport insurance. But these poor workers, you still have to take care of. They're relying on those wages for their basic food. What a beautiful way to end this Perek Hadran Allah HaSocher et HaUmanin. We now begin the 7th Perek, also called HaSocher, but the previous one was HaSocher et HaUmanin. This one is HaSocher et HaPo'alim. HaSocher et HaPo'alim. V'amar lehem, להשכים ולהעריב, מקום שנהגו שלא להשכים ושלא להעריב, אינו רשאי לחופן. מקום שנהגו לזון, יזון. לספק במתיקה, יספק. הכל כמנהג המדינה. Someone who hires day laborers, he pays them by the day. And he told them that they have to come extra early and stay extra late. If it's in a place where the general practice, the general custom is that people do not come extra early and extra late, then he cannot force them. So let's say generally people start at sunrise and they work until it gets dark. So if he made a condition before he hired them, that they have to come an hour before sunrise, or they have to stay an hour after it gets dark, then that would be valid. Any condition that you make before you hire a person, that is a valid condition. We're talking here about where he hired them, it's a stam. He went to Home Depot, he says, I'll hire you for the day, general practice, they get in the car, and now they're off, and then on the way, he says, listen, by the way, you know what? I want you, the next few days, I want you to work for me. I want you to come an hour early and stay an hour late. He cannot force them to do so. Rather, the assumption is the going practice, what most people do. That's true not only for time, but also if it's in a place where generally the employer provides lunch, then he has to provide lunch. Even if he didn't say so, that's what everybody's expecting. And if the employer usually provides sweet foods, desserts, and snacks, then he has to provide that. Everything follows the custom of the area. If you're in a place where the workers bring their own lunch, then the employer does not have to provide for them lunch. And now we have a story, a fascinating story. מעשה ברבי יוחנן בן מתיה שאמר לבנו, יצא ושכור לנו פועלין, הלך ופסק להם מזונות. So Rabbi Yochanan, the son of Matya, told his son, go and hire some day laborers. And so the son went, and he said specifically, we will provide food for you. וכשבא אצל אביו, אמר לו, בני, אפילו אם אתה עושה להם כסעודת שלמה בשעתו, לא יסעת ידי חובתך עמהן, שהן בני אברהם, יצחק ויעקב. So usually when you'd go to the place where all the day laborers are, you just say, okay, according to the normal custom, that's fine. But this son, he really wanted to encourage them to come. He said, I'll provide you food. So he shows up with the workers, and he tells his father, I told them that we would provide sustenance for them, mizonot. And the father said, no, you can't do that. Because if you provide food without specifying exactly what, then you have to provide for them like a meal of Shlomo at the height of his glory. And even that won't be enough. Because these are Jewish workers, the children of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and even if these particular ones happen to be poor, they're day laborers, not the highest paying job, but nevertheless, they are, as descendants of Abraham, they are important people. They're like kings and princes, and therefore you'd have to give them. It wouldn't be enough to give them like the Seudat Yehuda of Shlomo. You have to give them unlimited, all you can eat, anything. So you promise them too much. Rather, the father says, listen, go hurry up before they start working. Once they start working, then that's it. Whatever you promised them, you have to give them. So go to them before they start working and say, listen, the deal that we made is on condition that when I said food, we're only going to give you bread and beans. That's the standard meal for a worker. And if they agree, then that's okay. Then you'll continue. But you have to make that stipulation. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel lomed lo haya sarich lomar hakol keminhag hamedina. However, Rashbag says, no, they didn't have to make that stipulation because you always follow the regional custom. Even if you say we're going to provide food, everybody knows. What does that mean? Well, if that's a place where usually they have pita and hummus, then that's what you would provide for them. This is a beautiful story because it means that no matter what a person is, rich or poor, what their job is, what their status is, really all Jews are considered royalty, and really one should provide for and treat everybody with great respect, and it's just because it's impossible to do so, we don't give them the lavish meal that everybody deserves, because then that wouldn't be practical. So we say, okay, listen, only this much, but otherwise, really, an employer has unlimited responsibility to take care of his employees. Peshita. Now we ask, what's the chidush of the first thing? Normally people start at sunrise and they end when it gets dark. And then he hired these people and they come to the field and he says, oh, by the way, I want you to stay an hour late. Tomorrow morning I want you to come an hour early. So obviously he can't do that. You can't spring extra hours on workers that they did not agree to from before they started. We're talking about a case where let's say the going rate to hire a day laborer for a day is $100, and then when he's hiring them, he says, come work for me, I'll pay you 120. Mahu detema amar lehu haditfai lehu aagraihu adata dim kadmitu umchashchitu behadai. So we might have thought that the employer can say, why do you think I pay? Everybody else is offering 100. Why do you think I offered you 120? Right? It was because I want you to start early and end late. So that was implicit in the amount that I paid you. You should have known that you're going to have to work extra long. Kamashmalan damrule hai de tafatlan. So this Mishnah comes to teach us that the workers can answer and say, no, we understood that why are you paying us extra? Because you wanted us to do really quality work. We're going to really work hard and concentrate. So it's more quality work, not longer work. And so that's a valid claim. And even if he pays them more, and they had agreed on a higher salary, the boss can still not make the workers work late. Amar Shakish, Poel bichnisato mishelo, bisiato mishel baal habayit, shene'emar, tizrach hashemesh yasefun, ve'el me'ona tamir basun, yaseh adam lefa'olo ve'la'abodato ade areb. Resh Shakish says that this would be the standard law, that a worker, when he comes in, that means when he comes into the city at the end of the day, the fields would be outside of the city. So when he's done and he has to commute back to his home, that he does on his own time, meaning he has to stay out and work until the stars come out, and then he has to walk back in the dark on his own time. However, in the morning when he goes out to work, then he is that is on the boss's time. In other words, he doesn't have to leave his house before sunset and walk in the dark before that. Rather, he can leave his home at sunrise, and if it takes him a half hour to walk out to the field, that's a half hour. He'll show up a half hour after sunrise, and that's on the boss's time. Now, what's his proof? It's from this pasuk from Barachi Nafshi that we read on Rosh Chodesh. It's talking about all the wonders in the world, and it talks about the wonder of the moon. The moon, the sun knows when to set, and it describes what goes on in the night and in the morning. So tashet choshech vihi laila, bo tirmos kol chayto ya'ar. Where Hashem, when you bring darkness, it becomes night. And at night, all the beasts of the forest are astir. That's their time. All these night animals, and it's kind of scary to go out at night. That's when they're hunting their prey. Hakefirim shoagim lataref ulbekesh me'el ochlam. The lions roar for prey, seeking their food from God. It's a beautiful pasuk, thinking of the lions roaring, kind of like a prayer to Hashem. Please help me get a poor sheep that I can tear into pieces and eat for dinner. Tizrach hashemesh yasefun ve'el me'onatam yirbasun. However, then the sun rises, and all those lions, they go and they couch in their dens. They're gathered up. And at the same time, then human beings, they wake up and they go out to work, and they work in their offices and in their farms until evening. Okay, so there's talking about the cycle of the day and the night, and the relevance here is that, look here, Vezach HaShemesh, when the sun rises, then that's when all the lions are gathered and they go into their dens. And human beings, they go out to work. So when typically would you go out to work? At sunrise, Terach HaShemesh. So you only have to leave your house to go to work at sunrise. So you see that the commute to work is on the time of the boss. And however, he goes out to work until night. That means he has to stay and work out there in the farm, in the field, until it gets dark, and only then he leaves the field after dark. So you see that the commute back is on his own time. Now we ask, where does Resh Lakish's law apply? Didn't we just say that you look at the general custom, and so you follow the general custom? If the custom in certain places you always work from 8 to 5, then it's 8 to 5, 8 to 6, 8, whatever it is. So why don't you just follow the custom? And the answer is Bir Chadasha. We're talking about a new city, and there is no custom. They're just establishing what is the custom going to be. So by default, you follow the pasuk in Tehillim. Why don't you look at where the city residents come from? They don't just pop up out of nowhere. They came from somewhere. So let's look at the city they came from and copy the general custom there. And the answer is Binikuta'eh. We're talking about immigrants. People came from all different places all together, and the place they came from, sometimes they did at sunrise, sometimes dawn, sometimes later, so there's no fixed custom. Or it could be in a place that does have an established custom, but the boss says, listen, I want to follow Torah law. I don't want to follow the local custom. And if they agree before he hires them, then so what would be the Torah law? It would be what we find in this pasuk in Tehillim. Now we saw a halachic application of this pasuk in Tehillim, and now we're going to see another interpretation of this pasuk in the way of Agadah. And this will lead to one of the most fascinating and interesting and strange stories in all of the Talmud. Darash Rabbi Zera. V'amri leah Taneh Rav Yosef. Rabbi Zera taught this in public, and others say that Rav Yosef taught it in a beraita. מה דכתיב? תשת חושך ויהי לילה בו תרמוס כל חייתו יער, תשת חושך ויהי לילה זה העולם הזה שדומה ללילה, בו תרמוס כל חייתו יער, אלו רשעים שבו שדומים לחיה שביער. When the pasuk says, Hashem, you make it dark, and then it becomes night, and then at night all the beasts of the forest will creep out. So what does this mean? That you bring darkness and it is night? This is not talking about a 12-hour nighttime, but rather it's talking about this world, which is like night. Right? Even though there's day and night, we're talking about during this world in a person's lifetime. Morally, this is a time of darkness that it's not clear who is good, who's evil. Sometimes people don't get punished for the things that they deserve. It's a time when evil people can succeed. So that's what it says here. The forest, the animals of the forest, they creep forth. That's talking about the evil people who are as evil as they act like animals of the forest. They're really worse because the animals of the forest don't have free will, and these people do, and they do evil things. So here in this world, it's possible for evil people to have power and to inflict evil and do bad things. There is free will, and this is a time of night. However, this is not they will get what's coming to them eventually. Tizrach hashemesh yasefun ve'er me'ona tamir basun. Tizrach hashemesh lasadikim. Yasfun reshaim legehinam. Ve'er me'ona tamir basun en lecha kol sadik v'sadik she'en lo madod lefi kebodo. So when the sun rises, then they will gather up and go to their dens. So what does it mean? The sun rises? This is when the sun rises for the righteous, that those who were humble and downtrodden and persecuted during the nighttime, meaning during their lives, then after death it will be clear who is who. The sun will rise for the righteous, and the Rishaim, they will be gathered down into Gehinam, and they, meaning the Sadiqim, will go to their dens, to their correct places. That refers to every single Sadiq. There is no Sadiq that does not get a dwelling place according to his honor. Everybody according to his righteousness, they will be recognized for that and rewarded forever. Yaseh adam lefa'olo, yesu sadikim lekabel secharan, ve'lavodato ade areb, b'mi she'ishlim avodato ade areb. A person goes out to his work. That means talking about the sadikim. They're doing their work. What's their work? Torah, mitzvot, doing good deeds, helping others, making the world better. When they do that, then they can go out and receive their reward and their work, and they work until evening. This means that this refers to someone who completes his work all the way until evening. A person who sticks to his guns, does the right things in humility and patience and faith, and he does it his whole life and never gives up, even until his death. Then that's a perfect Sadiq who will deserve a great dwelling place in the world to come. Okay, beautiful derasha. And good, a source of faith for those who sometimes don't see evil being destroyed in this world, and sometimes see tzaddikim suffering in this world, that this is a temporary situation. Rabbi Elazar b'Rabbi Shimon, ashkach lahu par hagavna, tekat tafis gannabe, amar lehechi achalt lehu, lav kechevata metili, tichti bo termos kol chayto ya'ar. So now we have an amazing story. It's connected to the previous because it quotes the same pasuk. But also it's talking about this dilemma of, in this world, it's hard to distinguish between the righteous and the wicked. You never know what a person does at night, when a person does in hiding. Some people seem to be good, but they're really not. Some people seem to be evil, but maybe they have good traits. And so it's very hard to distinguish in this world. And so we have a story about Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And he saw a certain officer. Paraha gavna is a Greek word, is a Persian word, means a guard. And the guard was arresting thieves. He would go around. He's the sheriff. And Rabbi Elazar is curious and says, how can you do it? Right? Aren't thieves like wild animals? As the pasuk says, bo, at night, all the animals of the forest creep around. And so these are night robbers. They go creep at night, steal things, but then that's it. And in the daytime, you can't tell who they are. How do you know who they are? How do you know that you're arresting the right people? How do you find them? Some say the pasuk that he asked from was not from Tehillim Kof Daled, but from Tehillim Yod. Tehillim Perek Mizmor Yod. You have to read it. This section is part of a long acrostic, including Perek Tet and Perek Yod. It goes Aleph, Bet, Gimel. However, in this section, it goes into the mind of the evil person. What is he thinking when he goes and does this evil? And it says he's thinking God doesn't care, he's not watching, and it's really one of the darkest sections of all of Tehillim, describing what he does and what he thinks. And one of the Pesukim there says he lies in wait in a secret place like a lion in his lair, really describing these night robbers like dangerous lions. So he says, look at this pasuk here. So how do you know you're arresting the right people? Maybe you're arresting tzaddikim, and the Rishaim are getting away with it. So he's curious, how do you know what to do? Amaleh umay abed. So the Persian officer says, truth is, I have no idea. I arrest people randomly, and hope for the best. Because it's an edict of the king. The king says, listen, you have to arrest robbers. You have to arrest 100 people per month. I have a quota. So I look around. I say, that guy kind of looks suspicious. And so I whatever. I just arrest whoever I think. I really have no strategy. I have no idea even if there's proof, because they hide out. So Amar Tag Merach Hechi Tabid. So Rabbi Elazar says, come, I'll show you a good strategy. Full proof you can find who is the robber and who is not. Ul barba sha'eh lechanuta. Go, and 4 hours of the day, that means like 10 o'clock a.m., 4 hours after sunrise, and go to the tavern where people come and they drink. כי חזית איני אשתקה שתה חמרה וכאן נקית כסה בידי וכמה נמנם שאול ילווה. Now if you'll see who's going to the bar at 10 a.m. Okay, if you see people there, they're drinking wine and he's holding his cup and he's dozing off. So go ask him, what's going on with you? This is a curious behavior. Most people, they get up in the morning, they're full of energy and they work. Okay, maybe later at night they'll go for a drink. But, to drink at 10 a.m., what kind of people are these? So, if you see that he's a Torah scholar and he's dozing off at 10 a.m., must be he woke up early, maybe he woke up, early at midnight or early in the morning, and he studied Torah for many hours, and now he's taking a break, he's taking a nap. Okay, that's fine. Sadiq, great, beautiful. If he's a laborer, so must be he started working very, very early, and by 10 he's tired. He's taking a break, he's taking a little doze, having a drink. That's fine. And if he says he's a night shift worker, and now he's not making noise at night, so what could he be doing? Because we would hear him if he was, manufacturing something. But it could be that he's working with copper wires, making needles. This is a work that you could do all night. And it's quiet. You just need a little bit of light, one candle. And so it could be that he's working all night. We'll believe him, leave him alone. But if he's none of these three, if he's not a rabbi, and he's not a day laborer that started early, and he's not a night worker, then you know for sure he must have been all night robbing people, and that's why he's tired at 10 a.m. and having a drink. Arrest him for sure. All right, sounds like some good advice. Ishtama mileta bemalka. So this guard heard the advice of Rabbi Elazar, and he told it back up to the government. And the king's palace heard this advice. He said, "Oh, that's very good advice. What great detective work! Amazing! You're my ancient day Columbo." Amru karyana de igarta ihuleve parvanka. And so the famous phrase. So the king said, "The one who reads the letter, let it be a messenger." Right? Since you suggested the advice, so you know what? You should be the new sheriff in town, and you should follow it. This is like at a meeting. Anybody have any ideas? If you suggest an idea, then you know the boss is going to say, "Good idea. You're in charge. You have to go do it." And so the government hired Rabbi Elazar to be the new sheriff to enforce his strategy. So they brought Rabbi Elazar to the authorities, and then he started arresting thieves. He was following his strategy. He went to the tavern, asked them, "Shalach le Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha, hometz ben yayin, ad matai ata moser amo shel Elohenu lahariga." But Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha sent an angry message to Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon and called him vinegar, the son of wine. How long are you going to hand over, be an informer of the nation of God and send them to their execution in the non-Jewish, presumably Roman government? Why Chomes ben Yain? His father, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, he was against the Roman government, and he spoke against them, and because he did that, he had to run away and hide in a cave, in fact, with his son. So, you see, the father would never be a collaborator with the Romans. He was brave and spoke against the Romans. And you, now, look how you're a collaborator. You take God's Jewish people and you hand them over to the Romans. And even for something like just stealing, they get sentenced to death. That's it. You send someone to the Roman government, arrest someone and hand them over. You're never going to see that guy again. How dare you do this? Very strong allegation. Rabbi Elazar says, don't worry, I know I am taking away the thorns from Hashem's vineyard. I happen to be using the Romans, but I know these people and they're no good. They are criminals. And so we're cleaning up God's. I want to keep Hashem's nation, in fact, pure and good. So I'm doing a good thing. And Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha says, let the owner of the vineyard come and take care of his own thorns. Right? If Hashem wants to punish people, Hashem can do it. This should not be your job to collaborate with the evil Roman government to get rid of these people. So, interesting, Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha doesn't say necessarily that you're sending innocent people to death, but he's saying that you should not do that, not good to be a collaborator in this way. Yom Echad pagabe one day, a laundryman. Laundryman was like a low job, a low person in society. And he saw Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon, and he said the same thing. Vinegar, the son of wine. Amar medechasif kol ha'ishma mina reshi'ahu. Amar lehu tifsuhu, tefasuhu. And so Rabbi Elazar said, what is this guy? What kind of chutzpah does this laundryman have that he calls me, this lowlife, calls me a name, vinegar, the son of wine? Shema mina, I can conclude from here using the typical halachic conclusion. Right? After you have a long sugya of argumentation, Shema mina. So he is applying his Talmudic logic skills to this situation, and he says, this guy must be a Rasha if he could speak to me in such a way. And so he tells the guards that are with him, arrest him, and they arrest him. So you see here, he didn't find him in a tavern. He's not following his normal strategy. He got personally angry. Now, why wasn't he so personally angry when Rabbi Yoshua said the same thing? Okay, listen, Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha is a great sage. So if a great sage says something, okay, he responds, right? But it's not as insulting as if a low-life laundryman calls a great rabbi this name. So that's really chutzpah. That's why he gets much more angry at the laundryman than he does at his colleague. Now, now he did this out of anger, and so after his anger calmed down, so he said, you know what, I made a hasty decision. I should not have arrested him. So he goes to the jailhouse to try to get the laundryman out, to ransom him, but he wasn't able to. That's it. Once you get into the Roman penitentiary system, you can't get out. Kari aleh, shomer pivu shono, shomer misarot nafsho. And so Rabbi Elazar said about the laundryman, the pasuk, someone who keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps his soul from troubles. He should have been more careful in how he spoke. Interesting, Rabbi Elazar doesn't blame himself, saying, I really shouldn't have done that, even though he does feel bad. But he's like, this guy, he had it coming to him. Calling me a name like that, it's a good idea always to keep your mouth shut, be careful what you say, and that may save your life. Zekafu, in the end, the Roman government hanged him. Come to Ted Zikifa vekabache. Rabbi Elazar, he stood under the gallows and he was crying. He felt bad. He arrested this guy. Maybe he wasn't such a bad guy. Maybe he didn't deserve this. Maybe it's like we started with the theme. Maybe he was a Sadiq, or at least he was not such a Rasha, and because of that, His own personal anger and misjudgment caused him to hand over this person to the government to be killed who didn't deserve it. אמרו לה, רבי, אל ירא בעיניך שהוא בנו בעלו נערה מאורסה ביום הכיפורים. And so the people there who knew the guy, this laundryman, said, Rabbi, you should not feel bad. You should know that this guy and his son had illegal relations with Na'ara, who was engaged, so that's a sin of adultery, and and the father and son, and when they did it on Yom Kippur, this person is a total rasha. He deserved this and more coming to him, right? So don't worry, even though you didn't know all that when you arrested him, but you were right in your instinct that he must be an evil person. Hiniach yado al bnei me'av. Amar sisu bnei me'ai sisu. So Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, he happened to be a very corpulent man. And he put his hands on his big stomach and he said, my innards, rejoice. Right? Rejoice. Ma sifekot shelachem kach vada'it shelachem al achat kama v'chama. If in cases when you're not certain and you arrest someone and look, turns out to be totally correct, then when you are sure, when you go through all the real detective work and find someone, then you're sure that they're guilty, all the more so that you don't have to worry. In other words, you might say he had a gut feeling and he has large guts, and so they are reliable gut feelings. Muvtach ani bachem she'en rima v'tole'ah sholetet bachem. I am sure, he's still talking to his stomach, that worms and maggots will not affect you. The idea there being that a righteous person, when they die, their body is not decayed by maggots and worms. But even though it turns out that this guy was a rasha, and if his son was a rasha, Yom Kippur and all that, nevertheless, and even though he just said this, I'm always right, still his mind was not calmed. He had a moment of anger, and he followed the strategy, and maybe he was wrong. And he's always like going back and forth, justifying himself. He should have kept his mouth shut, but then also crying. And so you get some of the complexity of the character of Rabbi Elazar. And so since he was not convinced that he did the right thing, so he arranged for the following test. The test would have to do with his innards to see, he's now right, he's alive, so he can't tell if this is going to decay or not. So he arranged the test to do a surgery, a very unusual one. Ashkiyu sama deshenta ve'ailuhu lebeta deshisha ukra'u lecharse. So they said, give me a sedative. And they gave him, in other words, they put him out, they gave him some anesthesia. So you see, they did have some kind of narcotics, maybe from poppy seeds or hemp. So it got him knocked out, and they took him to a house of marble. So why marble? It seems that then we learned a lot about ancient surgery. They had to do surgery sometimes back then. I don't know how successful they were, but sometimes they were, because people went through it. And so they go to a house of marble. Marble, we can clean it very well. It's also cool. So when you're doing surgery, you want to cool down the body. They do today. Open heart surgery, they cool down the body for many degrees, and they cut open his belly. And they removed baskets and baskets of fat from inside him, because he was very fat, and they put them out in the hot sun in Tammuz and Av in a hot summer day. And even though generally when it's hot it will putrefy, but his innards did not putrefy. And you see, he proved that he was righteous. And now we're going to ask some technical questions about the validity of this proof, because after all, fat does not putrefy. Fat by itself, it'll melt, but it's not going to putrefy. All right, and so we say, Kol tarba la siriach shuraike sumake masriach. And the Gemara says, yes, true that fat by itself, when not attached to flesh, will not putrefy, but if there's veins in it, blood in it, then it will putrefy. But in this case, I'm assuming that these are his innards that are still attached to him, unless they're kind of scooping it out and doing some kind of liposuction. But in any case, there were red veins within and blood within the fat, which normally would decay and putrefy and smell. And even though this was a summer and hot day, it remained so. Apparently he survived this ordeal, and they sewed him back up, and when he woke up, he said, see, quoting from Tehillim again, I have set Hashem before me, always, therefore my heart is glad, my glory rejoices, and the end of the pasuk, my flesh dwells in safety. Literally, his flesh will be safe, and he will not putrefy, and that'll be a proof that he's a tzaddik, and he did the right thing. Okay, this test may thematically relate to what we were talking about before. You never know how to judge a person, because sometimes a person looks like they're good from the outside, but really maybe on the inside they are not. How do you know if tocho kebaro, if the person's outside is not like his inside, is like his inside, or if he's a hypocrite? And so Rabbi Elazar develops a strategy to be able to figure out from a person's behavior if they are a righteous person or they are a thief. And he himself, is his inside like his outside? He seems like he's doing a good thing in arresting bad people. On the other hand, he's also working with the government, and he's also getting these people killed. And so, what about Rabbi Elazar himself? So he does literally a tocho kevado test. As my insides, are they good? And he opens up his insides, literally or figuratively, checking his own motivations. Is he doing this for power, or for glory, or for honor, or really is he doing it l'shem shamayim? Does he doing the right strategy, or is it because he's just making guesses and assumptions and is no better than the previous guard? So all of this, the Pesukim and the test is to verify that he in fact is doing this. It's a very interesting meditation on good and evil, distinguishing between good and evil in this world, judgment, working with the government, being an informer, the tension between the rabbis about this. So really a fascinating story, and there's a lot more depth here. And we'll end with last story. Va'af Rabbi Ishmael b'Rabbi Yosef meta ki hay ma'aseh lideh. There was another similar incident with Rabbi Ishmael, the son of Rabbi Yosef, who was also appointed to be the sheriff. And something like this happened. Paga be'Eliyahu. Amar le'ad matay ata moser amo shel Elohenu lahariga. Now this time for Rabbi Ishmael, Eliyahu Nabi comes to him, not just a laundryman and not just a colleague, and says, how long are you going to be handing over God's nation to be killed by a foreign government? Amar le my abid halmana de malkahu. And so Rabbi Ishmael says, what can I do? It's an edict of the king. They told me I have to do this. I have a quota. I have to arrest people. Right? I'm doing my job. Amar le abu charkala asya at arok le ludkiya. And Eliyahu Nabi told him, no, you don't have to. When your father was asked by the government to go be the sheriff, he ran away to Asya. And so you could also run away. Here you can go Asia Minor, Asya. You can go here to Ludkiya. So run away, and that way you won't have to do this. Better to run away and go exile yourself rather than have to give in to this government edict. We'll see more interesting stories about Rabbi Ishmael, the son of Rabbi Yosef, tomorrow. But in the meantime, Emmanuel Levinas, the famous Jewish philosopher, wrote a very important article, or really it was a lecture that he gave on the previous story. It's published in his book, 9 Talmudic Readings. Well worth reading his insightful analysis. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.